Hello everyone, this is Jason from Iron Mission. In today's video we are going to be doing a 3-hole oil change on my Harley 114 M8 engine. This is a 24 electric glide limited. Love this bike. Now if you've never done your own maintenance before, don't worry, trust me, if I can do this, so can you, and it will save you all kinds of money. We ride about 15,000 miles a year, which means we're doing 3-hole oil changes. I do them all 3 holes every 5,000 miles. I got to do it on 2 bikes, on this one and on my wife's Road King. So I'm doing this a lot, but it's saving us a lot of money. I promise you can do it too. First thing I want to go over is what you're going to need for this process. Again, everything I've got here is behind me. A couple things you're going to need, obviously, is the oil. Now, this is not a video getting into a debate about what is the best type of oil to use. I use this stuff here. This is Maxima. You can find it on Amazon. It's good stuff. It's 20W50. So you're going to need 5 quarts of this. And by the way, I will have Amazon affiliate links down in the description below for just about everything you're going to need here to get this done. You're going to save a ton of money, like I said. So I use this, but I've also used the Harley Sin 3. I've used AMS oil. I still have some leftover red line. So I am not someone who's like, oh my gosh, if you don't use this, you're doing it wrong. And if you're that way, well, enjoy the oil you're using. This is what I use. And one of the reasons why is this is the engine oil. And you can put this stuff in all 3 holes. You can put this, you can use it as your engine oil, your primary, and your transmission. I personally think that's a bad idea. I've watched enough videos from people who are engineers and chemists, and when they talk about oils, especially for these Harley engines where the temperatures get a little bit warmer, I think it's a really good idea to use oils that are specifically designed for the primary and for the transmission. And so Maxima makes the V-Twin primary oil, which will be going in the primary. You're going to need a quart of that. And then this is the big one here, the really, really important one. I love this. This is my all-time favorite when it comes to transmission oil. This is the Maxima 85W140 for the transmission. For those of you, especially you Harley riders out there who have that characteristic clunk or you're having a hard time finding neutral, trust me, one of the best things you can do is move to this transmission oil, and that's really, really going to help. And so I have found that to be a big help. Of course, you're going to need an oil filter. We just often use the Harley ones. It's just best to pick these up at your local Harley dealer. You are also going to need the gasket kit. These are really cheap. Less than 10 bucks. Again, I just pick them up at Harley. I will put the part number down in the description below for both the oil filter and this 3-hole oil kit, the gasket kit. This is, again, super cheap. Go to Harley, pick up like 4 or 5 of these at a time. That way you always have them and you won't have to be worried about forgetting them when you're getting ready to do your oil change. All right, other things you're going to need. You're going to need some way to get the oil filter off. So you have a couple options. You can use this old school type here. Sometimes these oil filters, most of the time, even when I do them, after a while of them being on, they can be a little bit tough to get off. Again, I will put the part number down here for this, the Amazon affiliate link for this, but I still prefer these guys, the clamp. And again, it's down in the description, but it's just easier just to kind of grab on, even though you've got to kind of do it from an angle and twist. This 99% of the time works a lot better to get the oil filter off. When you are changing the oil, of course, you're going to need a way to capture all the oil, and you're going to need a way to add new oil in. The best possible option is using the low profile oil pan, which I'll have that linked. But I normally just use this, and it actually works just fine. But it works fine for the touring bikes. If you've got a soft tail with a 114, this might be a little bit too high, so the low profile oil pans work great. This one is awesome. Definitely like this style for adding the oil. Again, I'll put that down in the description below. The way to fill the primary is using this guy right here. I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. And so that is how we basically get the oil back in. Another thing you're going to need, just some empty containers, because eventually after you get all the oil in the oil catch pan, you're going to want to eventually bring this somewhere to have it recycled. And so just have a couple of these laying around before you start doing your oil change. Other good things to have, a measuring cup, because in a couple instances we're putting in less than a quart. And so you can take a few ounces out and just have a measuring cup here. Tools. I like having these little ring picks. If you've got a pocket knife for getting the rings off of the bolts and off the inside of your derby cover, that's going to be plenty fine. But this is kind of a nice thing to have. You're going to need some sockets. And so I have both the large and I have the small right here. And of course, we're going to need a 5/8 inch socket, and that's going to get all of the drain plugs off as we go through this process. So that's 5/8. You are also going to need a T27. It's the T27, and this is going to get your derby cover off, your primary. Now, if you don't have one of those, I bought a whole set off of Amazon. Again, link in the description below. Really inexpensive, and these have been pretty good. Another thing that you might want to consider, if you haven't already done so, just call Harley Service and have them order you an actual maintenance manual for your specific model year and your bike. You're not necessarily going to need it here because I'm going to tell you all of the torque specs and all that stuff and everything you need, but this is awesome, and trust me, you're going to save a whole lot of money by having this, because there's a lot of things you can do on your motorcycle once you have all the information. Next couple things you're going to need. You're going to need some foot-pound and inch-pound torque wrenches. Again, that's in the description below. I know it seems like a lot, especially if you've never done this before, but trust me, once again, once you have these things, you're always going to have them. And the payback on this is probably going to be one oil change, because if you're spending, like a lot of people do, $400 or $500 just to get your 3-hole oil change done at Harley, and you can get this done usually with just the consumables for like maybe 140 bucks, you start saving a lot of money real quick. Last thing, you're going to need a couple of socket set extensions just to make it a little bit easier to get under your motorcycle and get your stuff done. So, last thing you're going to need is a bike lift. Now, I'm showing you here the bike lift that I have. I ordered it on Amazon. This has been great, and really the only reason I use the bike lift in this process is so that I can get the bike level when I'm refilling the primary fluid. Pretty much the rest of the time, the bike is on the kickstand, because that's just the way I do it, and there's no issues doing it that way. So the bike lift is probably the most expensive thing you'd have to get, but trust me, again, it's well worth it. It's going to pay for itself after doing just a couple oil changes. All right, so first thing we have to do is I got to get this bike warmed up, because that's what the maintenance manual calls for. It says, hey, get the engine warmed up, get the oil warmed up, and then once we do that, we can go ahead and start changing out the engine oil. All right, so first things first, when we're going to be changing the oil, we got to allow for the oil to change and flow easily, and so we're going to go ahead and loosen up the dipstick here and just kind of keep this off and loose to the side, just like we see right here. So it's kind of loose. And that's the first thing we got to do. And then really we are ready to start draining. Now again, be careful, because you can hear the bike click, tick, 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 right? It's warm. So be careful of the exhaust, and the oil, when it comes out, it's going to be a little warm too. So we want to be aware of that. All right. So that bolt right there on the right-hand side, that is your drain plug for the oil, not the one on the left. So we go ahead, we're going to loosen that up. It usually comes off pretty easy. That's why you need that 5/8 inch socket. I loosen it. You can see I don't even have the oil pan down there just yet, because generally speaking, the oil doesn't come out, and I have to loosen it. And then eventually you'll get it to a point where you can take off the bolt by hand, which is what I generally do. Don't drop that in the oil pan. That really stinks when that happens, so just be careful there. Also, the oil is probably going to be a little warm because you just heated up the bike. And so after that comes out, it's going to take a few minutes for that to drain. Let's go get the oil filter done. Okay, quite honestly, this next part is the part I hate doing the most, and that is getting the stupid oil filter off. But it's not too bad. Again, if you have these guys, oil filters right back in here. It can be a little bit hard at first, but once you get it loosened, you're okay. Now, they do sell these oil catch cups that will kind of catch a lot of the oil and then direct it to an oil pan underneath. I have found I really don't need that, and so as long as I'm relatively careful, I don't get a whole lot of oil all over the bike. And I've got the oil pan positioned right underneath where the oil filter is anyway, but because it's sideways, you're probably going to make a bit of a mess. I've got some newspaper down here. I've got the oil catch can down there as well. And so we have to get in here, and we just have to loosen this a little bit. Now on the touring bikes, it's a pain because you got these lowers. If you don't have the lowers, it's not nearly as bad getting in here, but I just try to go ahead and grab this thing in here. And so sometimes you have to kind of work it in. And then once I have it kind of positioned, I can go ahead and we can get this thing turned. And I just got to loosen up a little bit here. And you can see it's already starting to loosen a little. There we go. And there we go. So once you get it a little bit, now you can turn it usually by hand, just like this. And that's why when you're doing this, when you put the oil filter back on, do not tighten this thing down super hard. The manual calls for tighten it by hand, and then around 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn beyond that. And if you do that, you're not going to have a super hard time getting this out of here. And so again, this is the old oil filter. I didn't spill a ton of oil, but that's the reason why we've got the paper towels and everything. A little bit dripped down there, so what? Not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go grab the new oil filter, and I'm going to go ahead and get that thing on there. Now, I've already got the drain plug tightened by hand down there. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you what we need to do in terms of tightening that down for the oil drain plug. But now here, let's go ahead and get the new oil filter on. Okay, so here is the new oil filter. I'm just going to go ahead and dip my finger in some fresh oil, and we're going to get some oil all around the rubber gasket here, just so that this thing sits nice and we don't have any issues with dry rotting on this gasket here. And so again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tighten this by hand, and as soon as it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I have got a nice, decent fit, then I'm going to go ahead and do another 1/2 a turn or so, and that's really all you need. If you do too much, the next time you go to take this thing off, good luck. Pro tip here, make sure your hands are not all full of oil. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to screw this thing on. And so we get to a point where I am just turning this bad boy in there. It's kind of hard to work in there, but you get used to it after a while. Okay, so at this point, I'm pretty tight. Now, one of the things I do is I will use this. Again, be careful. 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn means 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. But I like this because I can maneuver this in here a little bit easier than I can my hand, and then I can tell exactly what a 1/2 a turn is. And so once I have this thing completely on here, right? So I'm at the top, and so now I know, okay, well, 1/2 of a turn, oh, that slipped a little bit, but 1/2 of a turn is right. That's about 1/4, and that's about 1/2. That's it. That's all you need. That's all you're going to need here. Nothing's going to leak out. So now let's go ahead. I want to retighten up the bolt. I'm going to show you how to do that with the torque wrench, and talk about the specs there, because that we really want to get right as well. All right, so when it comes to tightening down that drain bolt, we do need the maintenance manual calls for 14 to 21 foot-pounds. That's where you're going to need your foot-pound torque wrench. These things, again, Amazon, awesome. One other thing to consider is you may need this. Basically what this is a kit that will allow you to take different size sockets and put them on different size socket wrenches. And so I'm going to put this little bad boy on here, snap it on, and that will allow me to put my 5/8 inch socket on here just like this. Again, I'll put that down. It's like 20 bucks. I'll put that down in the description below. But now all I got to do, tighten until I hear a click, and we've got it down to 20 foot-pounds. All right, so now that the oil is draining, let's go ahead and take a closer look at our drain plug. Let's make sure we don't have any metal shavings over here on the magnetic tip, and we do not. You can see here we do have that ring, and this ring is going to be replaced, and so I'm just going to take my ring picker there and just pull this ring off and put a fresh one on. Takes all of about 2 seconds. We have a wire brush here as well, and that wire brush, that will be used to clean the threads here. These threads are in really good shape, as you can see. So we're going to go ahead and take that wire brush, clean off the threads a bit, and go ahead and replace this O-ring real fast. All right, so here is our ring, the old one. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this bad boy right off of there. And it was in pretty good shape, but again, these things are like $4 or $5. It's just worth replacing this old one. And so let me go ahead and get a new one here. And this new one is just going to slip right on top, just like that. And so now we've got a brand new drain plug O-ring. And this, if oil is going to leak out, for a $7 package, why would you risk it? So this drain plug is all cleaned up, ready to go, nice and shiny, just waiting for the oil to drain. Service manual says 14 to 21 foot-pounds. I set it for 20. As soon as I hear that click, we're done. All right, so now we got to get the engine oil back in. The manual says put in 4 quarts initially. Warm up the bike, check it. I'll show you how to do that in a second. I'm going to put in about 4 1/4 just based on previous experience, and then we're going to go ahead and start the bike up. We're going to warm it up for a couple minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and check it. The dipstick itself, you can either check it on the Jiffy stand or you can check it when it is level. I just use the check engine on the Jiffy stand because that's what we've got it on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 4 quarts put in. All right, so we are right at the very, very bottom right here of the Jiffy stand full line. I am going to go ahead and add another quart, or not another quart, another 1/4 of a quart, just because I want to be right in the middle, and we're right about right here. So I'm going to go ahead, add a little bit more, another 1/4 quart, and I think we should be good. So 4 1/4, we should be in good shape. And there we are. We're at 4 1/4 quarts. We are right halfway up that line, which is about where I want to be, right about right there. So I think we're in good shape. Let's move on to transmission. Let's move on to the primary. All right, so we're moving on to the transmission. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of things you're going to need. Right here is your transmission dipstick right here. And so you're actually going to need a 3/8 inch hex head to get this out of there. So just add that to your list of things. 3/8 inch hex head for this guy right here. And of course, this should come off pretty easily. It just pops right out. Just give it a little turn. And then you should be able to unscrew this with your fingers. Just like so. And there we have it. And so that is your transmission dipstick right here. It's a little bitty guy. More on that when we go to refill. Let me show you where the drain plug is. So transmission drain plug, I'm pointing to the oil where we just were. We just put that back on. The transmission drain plug is directly behind it. So don't do that one. That's your transmission fluid drain plug. That's the one right there that you want to drain. So same thing, 5/8 inch socket. Go ahead and loosen it. You can usually get it by hand after that. Make sure you got your oil pan ready to go. All right, so this is the transmission drain plug. And again, I'm going to replace that O-ring just like I showed you. I've got the old one there now, on there obviously, and then we've got the new one right there that I'm going to put on. Now you'll notice on this one, I hate when they do this, but it makes it kind of a pain to get these things out. They put this pipe dope type of garbage on here. You don't need that. Don't do it. It just makes it hard to get this stuff in and out. So I'm going to clean these threads up. I'm going to replace the O-ring, and then I'll talk about how to get the new transmission fluid in and how much you need. All right, so that's in much better shape. Got the new O-ring on there, cleaned up the threads. This one goes back in the same way as the oil drain plug, 14 to 21 foot-pounds, and I'm going to put it at 20 since that's what the torque wrench is already set up for. So I'm going to get this back in there. Now you're going to see here with the transmission dipstick, you've got those two little arrows. It calls for 28 ounces of transmission fluid, and you want to be right between those two little triangles. And I have found if you pour 28 in, you're going to be right on there. And this is one where you do want to be on the Jiffy stand, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going to pour my 28 ounces in, and I'll show you it should be right smack dab in the middle. Hey, and a quick note, this is where you're really going to want this extended funnel because you're not getting your transmission fluid in there if you don't have that. So if you haven't already bought one, definitely do it. It's going to save you all kinds of issues later on. I did put the 28 fluid ounces in there. Let's go ahead and see where we're at with the dipstick. Okay, so here we are. I did add the 28 fluid ounces, and we are right there, right in between those two triangles. Hey, one quick piece of advice. When you're screwing this back in, be really careful because it takes a little bit of finesse to get this to screw back in, I have found. I actually snapped one of these one time. Not fun at all, but just be really, really careful. It should just screw in with your fingers, nice and easy. And then you're going to need 25 to 75 inch pounds, not foot pounds. Get your inch pound torque wrench out. Use that 3/8 inch hex head and just nice and gentle. You should be able to screw it all the way in pretty much. Then use that inch pounds. I usually like to set it right around 50. That's all you really need. All right, so I've saved the best for last, and that is the primary oil. And now with this one here, you've got the primary cover. Usually it's recommended, make sure that all of these bolts you can get them out before you start draining your primary fluid, because if you drain the primary fluid first and you can't get these off, now you're calling for a tow. So what we're going to do is I'm going to loosen these. This is where that T27 comes in. I'm going to loosen all of these up. Now, I'm a little different. I admit that. What I do here is, see, this stand that I have is awesome, but if I put that jack stand up here, I can't access the bolt and still get the oil pan underneath there. And so what I do is I will put my oil pan right here. I'm going to loosen these all up. Some of it's going to spill out. Who cares? We're draining it anyway. And then the drain plug is right underneath. It's actually right, well, I'll show you here in a second. I'll put a little film clip up there, but it's right underneath this thing. So I'm going to loosen this up. Some primary oil is going to spill. Don't care. Take this thing off. I'm going to drain it on the Jiffy stand, which is perfectly fine to do. Clean up that bolt just like we did with the other two. Put the bolt back in. Then I'm going to get the bike on the bike stand so that it's nice and level, so that when we refill, it's where it needs to be. And so let me go ahead and start loosening up these bolts. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen all these with my T27. And once you crack them open, I at that point, it's just easy enough to loosen those with your fingers. And so it basically just go ahead, you hear that little snap, that little click, and you're ready to go. But this one here, again, be gentle with these. I know it's a T27, but even that, if you strip these, you've got a heck of a problem. And sometimes they put these on way too tight. It is so important to use a torque wrench and torque them down to the proper specs when we put this back on. But I'm going to go ahead and loosen these things up, and I'll show you what it looks like inside. So one of the things that we're going to have to do, you can see it's dripping out a little bit. Who cares? We're going to have to replace this gasket. I have one in a gasket pack that we got, so I'm just going to pull this out, put this other one back in. I'm going to clean this up too because it's a little bit dirty. You can see the primary is pretty nasty. It usually is pretty nasty, and we're going to have to go ahead and still do the drain plug down there as well. So here is the drain plug from the primary. And so the last time, the 10,000 mile service, Harley did that because I had a free service based from another bike a long time ago that I bought when I had some prepaid service plans. And the last time they did this, they put all this piped up garbage in here. It's, again, not necessary, so I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to pull this O-ring off, replace it. Obviously, I inspect this magnetic part right here, make sure there's no metal shavings. There aren't. So let me go ahead and clean this bolt up. I'll put it back on, and we can start filling the primary. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to fill the primary. This is the last thing we have to do, but to do that, we really want to use this little contraption here I shared with you in the first part of the video. It just sits right like that, and it's going to allow us to fill the primary without spilling a bunch of stuff everywhere. Now, there's a couple different volumes that the maintenance manual shares. One is 30 ounces, and if you're doing 30 ounces, that is for what is known as a wet fill. That's what we did here. If you were doing a dry fill, in other words, you pulled out the entire primary, that would actually be 34. So we're going to do 30. I'm going to show you a picture. Now this one, I have found that if you put 30 in, you're pretty much going to nail it. You want to get right up to the clutch plate. And the guide there shows you, that picture there shows you about where you want to be. Like I said, I get pretty close to 30. I check it out. If it's just touching that clutch plate, then I'm good. We're good. We don't have to add any more. You don't want to add too much or too little, so we're going to go ahead. We've got our primary oil right here. I'm going to pour most of it in. And you can see here it's nice. Well, maybe you can't, but it's, trust me, it's nice and clear. It's not all that nasty brown gunky stuff that we had from before. And so we just pour this in. And like I said, I do these things about, it's like 6 times a year. So you start getting pretty decent at doing this stuff when you do it a lot. So that's most of, what I did with this thing, this is 32 ounces. And so what I did is I just poured 2 ounces out. Remember I told you earlier that both for the transmission and for this, if I am going to be using less than a quart, then I'll just pour out the ounces I don't need. It just makes it a lot easier. And again, I'll just often go in here, take this off, take a look. And again, it's going to be nearly impossible for me to show you this and be able to see it. But I have a little bit more to go, as would be expected, because I have a little bit more in this bottle. I'm going to go ahead and add some more. And we should be really close to 30 at this point. Again, I'm just trying to get up to that clutch plate. That is pretty much right there. So let me just add this tiny little bit that I have left. And I think we should be good. Yeah, I mean, we're right there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of hand tighten these down. The way this works is there's a very specific pattern. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so as it doesn't really matter now that I'm tightening by hand, but once I get these things to a point where I can start to use my torque wrench, then I'm going to want to make sure that I'm using the proper pattern, because that's what the maintenance manual says to do, to make sure that that gasket that we've got inside of there that we replaced fits in nice and easy. We don't get any leaks. And so like I said, I've got these all more or less tightened by hand. So now that I've got these mostly tightened by hand, we're going to use our inch-pound wrench, and we're going to do about 100 inch-pounds. And so again, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this. Hands are a little greasy, so this can be fun. But again, I'm not even going to get to a point where I'm even torquing them down. I just want to tighten down the rest of the way so that they are just not easily turning like you see now. And so once I get these things fully torque down, we're really gonna follow that pattern too. So I'm just tightening these down. All right, so here we go. This is our top. Again, we're at about 100 inch-pounds. You hear that click? That's enough. There's a click there, that's 2, this is 3, that's 3, 4 is over here, and this will be 5. Now I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but again, you tighten these down way too far, and the next time you go to do this, you're gonna strip all these things out of here and you're gonna have a nightmare. So that is the primary, we are done with that. All right, so that was it. That was our 3-hole oil change. Couple things you want to finish up with. Make sure you clean up any oil on the floor on your motorcycle. You don't want oil on your tires and then go out and start sliding around. You don't want to slip on anything in the garage. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Ride safe, everybody.